You're gonna do an org chart of today. And then we're gonna look at our goals for 2025. So an example would be if our team wants to close 300 units and we have enough agents based off of their goals, if they all said, you know, I wanna close 60, I wanna close 40, we'll add those up and say, do we have a gap? So if our total comes to 260, we have a gap of 40. So then we would say, great, we either need to go find 2 20-unit producers or we need to go find that agent that's gonna produce 40 to 50 transactions. That's how I would then establish, awesome, I have my goals for 2025. What are my gaps? And then we're gonna create the future org chart. So example would be, you know, if it's Paulina, and then we've got Abby. And Paulina's like, oh, I'm at a point now where I need a TC or a listing manager and or I need a showing assistant, right? That would be our missing link. It would be, okay, then we're gonna come over here and we're gonna have a showing agent, or we're gonna come right here and add that TC listing manager. So then, or maybe it's both. That then becomes our recruiting goals. Does that make sense? So this would be our future org chart and you would have your original org chart.
Based on your experience, what do you think, at what point would Paulina think either showing assistant or the next like ops hire?
If Paulina's looking up and she's saying, I'm so busy, I am getting sucked into showing all, I have 75% buyers, I'm kind of out of model, I don't have enough listings, but I have Abby, so she's made the right hire, right? She has the admin. When David was talking yesterday and he said, most people look up and say, I want a buyer's agent. The problem with that is if you don't have enough leads for that buyer's agent, they will leave you. So that is why we launched the showing agent model, because if Paulina looks up and she's buyer heavy, that may be where we have the conversation of, I think I need a showing assistant. But if Paulina looks up and she's like, I'm 60% listings, 40% buyers, Abby, you're doing all of my marketing, my financials, you know, maybe you're doing my TC stuff, then we could look up and say, well, maybe we need someone to help on the listing side. And then that would be our next admin hire. So Paulina would take her 80%, that's Abby's job. Abby gets overwhelmed. Abby takes her 80% and we say, great, the next hire's doing it. Or maybe Abby's perfectly fine. She can handle anything and everything, but Paulina's spiraling because she's out in the field showing houses, showing houses, showing houses. Then we could say, okay, maybe it's just that.
So you'll go back and look at your transactions this last year to see how many list sides did you close versus how many buy sides you closed to see where you're at. Because theoretically, you would like to be 50-50, but if you're buy side heavy, then you're missing on the listings. So we know from the MREA, listings lead to leverage, more time availability. You're not having to go show the properties, people are coming to you. So look at your closed transaction count. And for those of you that have been at KW for a while, you can look at your multi-year trends to show the data over the last 3 to 4 years and how much has that changed over the last years for that too.
So something,
Some of the things that could sway it is some people may not have captured a lot of buyer opportunities, 21, 22, because listings were all selling so quickly. They don't have a sign in the yard that people couldn't call. You could gain buyers from that too. So that could cause a discrepancy in your numbers.
yep, and if you didn't take business planning down here, was a couple weeks ago, a month ago.
Yeah.
And you need those docs, I'm sure Rachel has them. If not, I can send them to you guys. But like she said, most of what I'm seeing on my coaching calls is people have been running buyer heavy, where most times it's 50-50 or you want to lead with listings. The market had caused a surge of buyers. So most people were running 60% buyers or above and 40% listings. So they're working harder, not as, I don't want to say smarter because that's not right, the right thing. It's just it was what the market was doing, right? Inventory and all of the things that led to that. The goal would be to get it as close to 50-50 as you could, or 60% listings, 40% buyers. Keep more money in your pocket.
Do you have that? You need to share. What's been interesting with the market center this last year is we've been more 50-50 on listings and buyer sales as a whole, than we have been in a long time. So I think it just goes to show that the market's now changing, because there was a while that we've been very out of balance. We were very buyer heavy for a very long time. So that's where you could see us popping up like listing competitions, things like that, to try to get agents to start focusing more on the listing side. If you don't have it, that's okay. I just thought
I do, but I'm like, am I in the wrong drive?
Google Drive.
More so like, which drive did I put it in? There it is, found it.
So then, as kind of recapping while Monica's pulling that up, look at your org chart today. And as you're going through and putting your future org chart, you don't have to put a person's name, just put the role. So just like Monica had put here, this is a SA is showing assistant, this is a TC, which David yesterday in career visioning, he gave us a perspective of like, let's say Abby really thrived in the TC role and maybe you didn't like the marketing or maybe the other ops side, you could switch it to where you know your other hire is gonna be that person, like the marketing financial person as well. So you can kind of pick and choose what that is going to be like for that portion of it, but then it just kind of changes of who's kind of responsible or who's reporting to that person.
All right, kids, okay. All right, so if you look at your paper, you're gonna have hours per, and I left a blank there. Is it per week? Is it per month? Is it per quarter? Landon, do you need one of these?
Yes, no, sorry.
And then the next box would be, so the blanks there, if you want to look at it monthly, weekly, quarterly, number of phone interviews per, again, week, day, month, quarter, doesn't matter. Number of KPAs per day, week, month. And then assistants and operations onboarded and agents onboarded. So on the right there, we would say, if we're going to use Paulina and Abby as an example, the goal would be to onboard one admin and one showing agent, right? So that's where your goal would be. And then you could look at that. Someone like me, I have to set, if I'm in the middle of hiring, I have to set a weekly goal of like, I need to at least do one KPA. I need to at least schedule 1 or 2 phone interviews until we find these people. Otherwise, I won't do it. I'll wait till the end of the month and then I'll be like, crap, I didn't do any of this. I now need to do 3 of them. So that's why that exists. I left you 2 extra blanks down there in case there are other things you need to add on there, phone interviews. Maybe it's just lead gen and networking. I want to go to, one class or one networking event to try to find talent. Database is probably one of my most favorite topics when we're looking at this, because this is where operations can make the biggest impact in the business. This doesn't mean that you become a lead generator, right? This just means that you're intentional with your database. So yesterday when David was here, he was having the conversation about, if you're level 2, level 3, level 4, your ops people, are there SOI contacts in your database? Are you adding to the database? So when you were onboarded, how many of your friends, your family did you put in there? And then make sure those people are tagged. So if you look at it and today you're at 0, great, let's set your goal for next year. How do you add 100 people? How do you add 200 people? I'm sure all of us have over 1,000 friends on Facebook. I'm sure all of us have, if you're like me, 500 people on your phone that you have no idea who they are. Dump them in your database and start communicating with them. The next couple become the team goals. So number of database completes. They have a name, email, phone number. If you're using command, that's super easy to filter. You can just add those filters in there and it will show you. Record where you are currently. So as you're walking through this, my goal would be immediately to go back today or tomorrow and say, where are we at currently? How many SOI contacts do I have? And don't lie, the goal is that we're gonna see all the growth and your rainmaker is gonna be really happy with how intentional you're being. So you actually want this to look fantastic sometimes. So number of SOI contacts, number of database completes, number of database mets. The completes and the mets to me are 2 totally different things. The completes are just the information that's living there. We have all their contact information and their address. The mets are people who know us, like us, recognize us, trust us. It doesn't mean they've done business with us, but it means that if I said, yeah, I'm with Dan Holt's team or Holt Homes Group, they would say, oh yeah, we love Dan. He banks with us, or, I've sold my house with him. So they can easily recognize you. And then your database conversion. And then here's how you can figure that out. So if you look at your database conversion, it's the total number of contacts in your database excluding data dumps. So say you're farming and you have 900 houses in your database because you pulled the tax records. We're not going to count those contacts, so exclude those people. Then you're going to look at the number of closed transactions last year. So if I left my phone upstairs. If I have 250 closings and I have 30,000 people in my database. Oh, perfect. Thanks, Rach. So say I have 250 closings and I have 30,000 people in the database. I'm converting at under 1%, which is not great. That means I'm missing smart plans. That means my follow-up is trash. It means I'm not executing my events very well, and or my database just isn't cleaned. Most of the time I see this when we do this for the very first time at 1% or below. So if that comes up for you, just know you're not alone in the world. This is a common thing because a lot of people don't talk about it. But if we do want to talk about working smarter, not harder, it's getting that conversion rate up. So are you converting 5% of your database? That would be a great place to start. If you're at 1%, how do you get it to 3%? So if you were looking, if I'm, say Landon's a team leader and Landon has a database of potential agents. Did I hit something?
No.
Okay. Landon has a database of potential agents and his goal is to recruit 75 people to the market center, right? Statistically, whether we're talking about recruits and or contacts for real estate, statistically, if your goal is 75 agents, we need to have a database of 750 agents. Okay. So if our team goal is 500, I need 5,000 nets that are consistently on a smart plan, a drip campaign, all of that good stuff.
What's a healthy database number? Because you said the percentage, you see a lot of people at 1%. What's a number that they should?
Really, if you could be converting over 5%, like right at 5%, you're doing a really good job.
Okay.
Because you think about a lot of people in your database, especially if they're METs and complete contacts like that, they're really only moving every 7 to 10 years, right? So we know that there's that turnover time and that longevity there, which is why you'll always hear people say, don't just service past clients. Don't just service your SOI because eventually you're going to run out. So when we look at this, figure out what your database conversion is minus the data dumps. Most of you are going to probably be at 1 to under 1%. Don't let that make you feel gross. But if you are at that number, I would say, how do you get to 3%? So that would be what I would recommend. If you're above that number and you're like, we're converting 3% of our database, how do you get it to 5%? If you're converting 5%, how do you get it to 6%? Once you get up over 5%, I would only increase your goal by about 1%, 1 to 2%. There are very few people in the industry that are converting at 10%. But it's just because they're not having this conversation. Because if you think about, like, if I were to back all the trash dumps out of our database, it would probably leave us with about 20,000 solid contacts. We're not converting 10% of that, right? So healthy goal is 5%. 10 is like you're a rock star doing what other people are not doing. So here's how you get that math. This is all in there for you. So realistic currents, set your goal. Again, number of SOI contacts, how do you get 200 in there? That's a really great goal for you to have. Database completes, say you only have 5,000 completes out of 50,000. Set yourself a hefty goal, break it down quarterly. Any questions on the database section of this about the math, healthy goals?
So I'd say if you, in your database, if you don't have your contacts already like tagged as SOI, like sphere of influence, or if they're METs, go back there, and especially if you have multiple agents, because I know some of you have multiple agents on your team, going back through and just getting those tags so you have those numbers. Because that way you can start filtering through those as you're looking for those specific people.
Yeah. Tactically, if you look up and you're like, this is a disaster, which is what happened to me about 2 or 3 years ago. We did a massive database change and tons of things lost tags. They got lost. It was just awful. And at the time I was coaching with Nicole, and Nicole said, how many Mets do you have? And cause I was like, it's such a disaster. I have no idea where to start. And she's like, how many Mets do you have? And I'm like, 1,500. However, I know we've closed way more than that. So I know we have way more past clients in there. And we broke that down quarterly. And our goal that year was 500. So I knew we needed 5,000 Mets. So that was my goal. Every quarter I broke the 5,000 down into 4 chunks. And that I had a monthly goal, a weekly goal, and I had to report adding those Mets every single week on my coaching call. So when we talk about accountability and we talk about how do you move an agent's business forward, the database is like the number one place to start. Start with the Mets, start with the completes. And then from there, we would just look at, okay, if Paulina wants to close, 60 deals, does she have 600 Mets that she's inviting to events and staying in front of? If I look at Jenny on our team, that's Jenny's goal. Jenny's like, I want to service 60 buyers for work-life balance. And right now we're working with, how do you get to 600 true Met people that would recommend you, know you, like you? Say she gets to 400, then it's like, great, you need a new lead gen plan to get 200 more Mets. Are you holding open houses? Are you farming? That's where those conversations come into play. Yes.
When you classify them as a Met, is it just, it has to be face-to-face?
Not necessarily face-to-face, but they know who you are. They would recommend you. They like you. Maybe they're a past client. Maybe it's your high school teacher, right? Like they're a Met for you. They're an advocate for you. Where the completes are, maybe we don't know them, but we know they live in a house and we have all their contact information. And a lot of people will confuse their Mets with like a VIP list, right? You may eventually get to a place in your career where you have 8,000 Mets or 5,000 Mets. And yet those 5,000 people may not be VIPs, right? VIPs, when I look at those people, it could be who has continually referred us business, even if they've never transacted with us, who shows up to every single event. And if they hear someone say, I'm looking to buy or sell, they would say, you should call Dan Holt. Those would be like your VIPs, okay? So if you were to look at that in recruiting at a market center level, right, that would be, okay, we have a database and we have 1,500 agents that we've met in here. However, these 20 are my highlights. They're my hotspots. They're who I'm working on. Maybe they're my VIPs. All right, reviews. If you are getting 80% of your clients leaving a review, you are killing it. So you look at this, I always back out. If we're looking at our team and saying, our goal is to close 350 units, I'm going to take 80% of that. But what I'm going to do first is back out our number of SOI and repeat clients who have left us multiple reviews. So if I look at this monthly and Megan has 20 closings projected for the month, I'm going to go in and say, who's already left us a review in multiple spots? Let's back them out. Maybe then we get to 16. So I'm looking at, did 80% of the 16 leave a review? And that's her metric. Because we work with a ton of builders, right? We work with builders. We work with people who transact all the time that have left reviews on every single website, and I'm not going to ask them again. So back those out, set yourself up for success. So if you take the 150 units times 0.80, you then have 120 review goal for the year. I like to break it down monthly. Because for operations, we can't control necessarily if our agent actually hits their goal, right? We can do everything to support them. And where I was failing was saying, okay, we need 350 reviews and we didn't have 350 closings. So we were going after anyone and everyone to get reviews, which was great. But we want it to come from the people we're working with and or that are VIPs. So when you break this down, take a look at how many do you have current number in Google, Facebook, Realtors, Zillow, your website, add in whatever you're tracking reviews on, Angie's List, I don't know what all there is. And then what's your 2025 goal? You could either just do this of like, I just want a sum, I want 50 reviews, and I don't care where they come from, then don't break your review down site by site. But I know that if all of our reviews are being left on Google and Facebook, we're in a really good place with our SEO. So those are the two that I would push. Don't forget that if they don't have a Gmail address, they can't leave you a Google review. And if they don't have Facebook, that will be challenging. So always have a backup. And because we get realtor.com leads just organically, our third website that we push to is realtor.com because they can leave recommendations or actual reviews. With Zillow, they will verify a sale before they post a review. So just know that if your stuff's not lining up, if that client leaves a review, it will never post to your Zillow website. Also, if you are encouraging, these are all the things I've learned the hard way. If you're encouraging clients to leave a review on all 3 websites and they copy and paste, most likely it will not hit any of those websites. The SEO will figure out what you're doing by your IP address, and like Zillow won't post it, Google won't post it, Facebook will probably post it. But in my experiences, just direct them to one website to leave that review. And if there are multiple client who has closed multiple times, like what Megan will do is say, hey, I know you left us a Facebook review last time. Would you care to leave us a Google review? So she has a place where she's tracking where they've left reviews, what that conversation looks like, so that she can help build the other platforms.
And that's one of the big metrics that you use within your admin, right? Is getting reviews.
Megan gets paid per review on closings if it's tied to a closing.
Mhm.
So, you know, if she's just asking family and friends to leave one, we don't pay off of those. But if a review is tied to a closing, she does get a bonus off of those reviews. Most of the time, we generally don't talk about this, but most of the time, teams will start that bonus between $20 and $25 per review. And then have a pretty hefty goal. So if you think about that, say if I looked at Megan and Charlie, when we were doing this, our structure was a little bit different because we had 2 TCs. But if I looked at them and say both got 200 reviews, that was an extra $5,000 a year for them off of the files that they were handling if 100% of the people left a review. That's a big chunk of money for someone if they look at, hey, I'm just sending you a website and you're leaving us a 5-star review.
Mhm.
So not everyone does bonus off the reviews. Sometimes this is just part of your expectation, which is what I see most of the time. But it is fun to incentivize it or do a push of like, hey, if you get 200 reviews, you get a $200 gift card or, you know, $100 gift card. So anytime you can incentivize something, it's fun. Any questions around the reviews? Most people, when they start this, if they've never tracked it, they're usually around 40% reviews left. So if you're at 40% this year, maybe next year, your goal is 60% and you work up to the 80%. When we started this, we were at like 30%. It was really low. And so then that next year it was, how do we get to 50% of our clients leave a review? How do we get to 60%? How do we get to 70%?
You mentioned sending emails, but is there other ways that Megan gets the reviews?
Actually, it's always like, she will have that conversation when she onboards a file that, hey, as we
With the
go through
client.
this, we're gonna ask you for a 5-star review. If at any point we're not giving you the service you feel, please let me know. We wanna get that adjusted as quick as possible. So they get touches throughout. They get emails. She may text them the moment that they're like, you guys are so amazing. She'd be like, I love to hear that. Cody loves working with you guys. Would you care to leave Cody a review? So we always tie it back to the agent or Cody and I a review, right? We really want them to review the agent. Cody does get several appointments based off of the reviews where with his people, we posting a photo and mentioning his name. So there will be people that call and say, I see that you sell a lot of homes. Cody's a buyer's agent, so he actually doesn't. But he has taken a couple listings this year because people reading our reviews thinking that he's a listing agent. Got
So
it.
for example, are they reviewing on Cody's
Mhm.
Google business page or the whole one?
The whole one. Yep. On the whole one. And it's shocking the number of people who will scroll those reviews and see Cody is really good about like encouraging Megan and Cody both. They're like, if you want to post a picture, that's more helpful. You know, the more, if you could actually leave us a review, not just click the stars, that's more helpful for Cody. So we're kind of coaching them along the way and making it as easy as possible. Or we can, like, there's been a couple of times Megan said, I'm happy to write the review for you right now. I'll copy and paste it back to you if you can just submit it on the website. The easier you make it, the more reviews you're gonna get. It's just about being intentional with it. And we have found on our team is if someone doesn't want to call someone for a review, they've not done a good job. So we will mastermind around that or talk about the experience of what happened, you know, where did it happen? And know that there are sometimes like your vendors, your lenders, they're gonna screw it up for you. So it doesn't mean that those people still won't leave your review. That would be the conversation of like, gosh, I hate that you guys had this experience with that inspector. Here is, that is just what Scott Berry did, right? How was your experience just with Cody and our team? Would you care to leave a review on just that experience? So you can kind of isolate those objections. Any other questions about reviews? If you had the boot camp, if you went to the boot camp, if you have that, if you went to any of the Friday things that Rach was doing for a while, that review playbook is in there. So if you ever want to see those scripts or any of that, we all have that. Referrals is another huge way, really the main way in operations that you can hit your goals and make the money you want to make. I'm going to use Megan Lowe as an example. When Megan was on our team, Megan was in the middle of college, and we were just chatting about how could Megan pay off more of her student debt? How could this work for her? And even though everyone knows, like on our team, you get a 25% referral if you bring business from your SOI. Sometimes unless you do the math, that's not very motivating. You hear 25% and you're like, yeah, whatever. Off of the average sales price in Springfield, say if we just say it's 270,000 right now, your average GCI is going to be $8,100, right? And say, Abby, you have an $8,100 closing in GCI and Pauline is paying you 25% of that. You're making over $2,000 just from referring someone to Paulina and doing nothing else, right? So when Megan and I walked through this, she's like, I would love, one of her goals was paying off that semester's college debt. And when we did the math, I'm like, you need less than one closing to pay this off, right? Like you're never going to get there on a review bonus with what we're doing right now. How do you go get one referral? And I think that your Megan brought in 2 or 3 referrals that ended up closing in that quarter. Like she more than paid off what was happening. Megan Hayek, I mean, she will make a small, awesome bonus on her SOI because she's been so intentional with it this year. I think she's already had like 4 or 5 closings off of her SOI. And there's nothing as the leader and as you guys start hiring and building your teams, there's nothing more exciting than to be able to pay somebody that bonus in an operations role because it's life-changing in our worlds. So if you look at this, and I'm going to use rough numbers, but say Madison's on our team and Madison's making $40,000. And I'm looking at, we know that MREA teaches us that everything should have a 4 times ROI. So 4 times return on investment. So if I take that $40,000 and I times it by the 4 times ROI, I'm going to get $160,000. So if I'm creating Madison's goal for our team, I'm going to take that $160,000. I'm going to divide it by the average GCI. Bless you. Thank you. So say that average GCI is $7,800. For Madison to pay for herself 4 times, and I would never look up and question like, oh gosh, the market's down, we've got to make layoffs. Do you think that I would ever in my life question if Madison was profitable for our team? If she was bringing me a 4 times ROI. No, she would be the last person in the world that I would let go. What that would mean though, is that 20 and a half units would be needed at that average GCI to give me a 4 times ROI. So when you start this, maybe you look at, am I bringing in a 2 times ROI? What does that number look like? Could I bring in 10 referrals? It doesn't have to mean SOI referrals. It could mean that you went to a networking thing, you met other ops or agents or clients, and they want to do business with you. And you're like, I'm not an agent, but Paulina's amazing, right? That came from you. That is your referral. That was an effort of an activity that you did. I treat open houses the same way. Like if Paige were to hold an open house for us and she brought in 3 leads, at that point, those are hers, right? So, hey, she's going to get a bonus on those things. And we never would have had it unless she went and did that open house. So when you look at these, referrals could be personal SOI. So maybe you have a goal of 3 people, right? Maybe you had none in 2024, but next year, maybe it's 2, okay? What I want you to hear is when you're setting these goals, be really realistic. if you have 0 people, don't say that you're gonna do 20, right? If you didn't do 1, you're not going to do 20. So make it really realistic. How many vendors? So there was 2 years ago, I think, that Megan made a relationship with an insurance person. And she helped build his business and he helped build our business. So she went and found her own vendor that she could recommend people to on the TC side. And they built a great relationship and they passed referrals back and forth. Charlie was here at the time. Charlie had a boutique place in Bolivar that she connected with and was really good friends with. And they just had this thing that if she ever heard about real estate, whatever, I think Charlie closed about 2 from just having that boutique contact, right? So vendors don't have to be real estate related. There's agent to agent referrals, which clearly most of the time we have to pay out a 25% referral to that agent. But say Madison's built an amazing relationship with an agent down in West Plains and we're doing business with them. I'm having to pay a 25% referral on that to that agent, but Madison will also get a bonus because that was her recommendation, her relationship. It's gonna look totally different, right? So that's gonna count towards one of those 20. And of course, past clients, if Madison's TC, she's working on files and Jennifer's client says, oh gosh, my neighbor's selling, you should reach out to him. He owns 500 Main Street. Madison just brought us another referral, a past client referral, right? And then of course, referral sites, if you're paying for any referrals, Glenn Beck, Dave Ramsey, 72 Sold, all of those things. If you're the one nurturing that relationship, you're the one handling all of the communication within that. So if you use HomeLight, like there's a whole process in there that you have to follow. If I'm the one doing that and we're getting those leads and I'm setting them, those are counting towards my 20 referrals. Does that make sense? Any questions on the math? Current goals? I know this is a lot to chew on and swallow. And it doesn't mean that all of these things have to be what's on your GPS or your goal setting, but these are ideas on how you can quantify your results in your role. You good to move on? So marketing, you guys can change anything you want to track in here. I was kind of going off of Megan and Amanda's tracker that they were running on. Facebook and Instagram were the 2 biggest things that we set benchmarks on. There were way more than these 4 columns on ours, but I tried to compress this for you guys. In your social media world, what I would recommend is where are you at today? Fill in the 2024 all the way across. Maybe it's the last day of December that you do this. How many followers do you have? What is your reach? How many engagements are you getting? Clicks, whatever that looks like. Instagram's the same way, change the words. And then what does our goal need to be? So like when Amanda was our marketing person and she worked for us, her goal was to grow our Facebook following by 10,000 people, right? So then we broke that into quarterly, we broke it into monthly. We went through strategies on what we were posting, what events we were doing, what we were doing to get them to follow us. And so that was a huge part of her goal setting. Of course, if you're doing YouTube videos, great, throw YouTube in there. TikTok, if you guys have a team TikTok and you're doing that, awesome, put that in there. Just think social media, whatever you're doing, great, add boxes, add goals, but it's where are we at today, 2024, where do we want to be at next year? What's our growth? And then of course, newsletter, this is one of my most favorite things if we're talking about marketing. Newsletters are a slow burn. It takes a little bit to start seeing results from those. They have to be consistent. So if you send it and you send it on the 2nd Tuesday of the month, send it on the 2nd Tuesday of every month. If you send it at 4 o'clock, send it at 4 o'clock on the 2nd Tuesday of every month. You will organically and unconsciously train your people that your newsletter comes out on Tuesdays. We have sent ours at the same time and the same date for the last 4 or 5 years. And there are appointments that come in. So if it comes from Jen, they will message Jen back and be like, hey, I'm actually looking to sell my house. Boom, we pass that lead directly to Jenny or Cody or whoever. We just got a lead from the newsletter. Megan just fulfilled 1 more referral to her goal.
So you count, since Megan did the newsletter.
Megan's in charge of my marketing. So if Megan's doing the newsletter and we're getting people responding to our newsletter, then we're doing something right. We put so much focus on our newsletter that Megan and I talk about it every single Friday morning. What's going in it? What are the national holidays? What did people click on last time? What do we need to do again? So when we look at those newsletters, like most often, if we start with a video, it's gonna have the most clicks. We're gonna get the most engagement if there's a video at the top. And then we don't make it all real estate. So it's like some type of video update from Dan or Jen is who we like. Sometimes we'll do Grant or Cody or Jenny or somebody. And then maybe we do like an event recap, or maybe the event recap is the video, right? So don't make it just real estate. Make it community, have buckets. What does that flow look like?
When you say they're responding, is there a platform or are they just responding to the email, or are they clicking a link to have some sort of inquiry?
Just depends. So we do have like the not clickbait, I'm not gonna say
Yeah.
that, but the engagement,
Yeah.
right? So it's sign up for the next event, or it's RSVP for your pie here. Leave us a review here, click here and it may reroute them to Instagram to look at something. So we do have that to where they can click and respond. What was your initial question?
So like the person that responded saying, hey, I'm wanting to buy
Yeah.
or sell.
So usually that may have been that they clicked on a market report
Got
for
it,
their
okay.
house, or that could have been like top tips from our photographer on how to get your home ready to sell.
Got it.
So, and sometimes it's just the newsletter itself. It's like, oh yeah, Jen Davis, Dan Holt, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll respond and be like, oh, thanks for sending me this. I actually have a question about this. We do spotlight a vendor every single month and do a vendor giveaway every single month. So that may be Scott, we gave away PBR tickets. I think Scott Berry sponsored that. And so every month now, organically, we're training our people to look and say, oh, I should enter to win.
Yeah.
And that has had we're not paying a dime for that. Our vendors are sponsoring it. But that has had our engagements, our clicks, and our responses have went up just by doing that giveaway.
That's what the GSBOR did for their weekly newsletter. They started doing a giveaway every week, and they changed their open rate from like 30% to like 75% just by
Yeah.
doing the weekly giveaway.
The other thing I found is like we switched from MailChimp to Flowdesk. Flowdesk is a fraction of the cost, and our unsubscribes went way down and our deliveries went way up. But the thing I like about Flowdesk is it will give you feedback on what you need to change. So we were mass sending to 20-some thousand people, 30-some thousand people. And they were like, consider breaking this down into groups of people.
Interesting.
And so this last time, Megan's like, I'm gonna send it to 5,000 people and test it out. And I'm gonna send it to 10,000 more, and I'm gonna send it to 5,000 more, right? And clearly you're sending it to less people, so your open rate and all that's gonna go down, or it's gonna go up. But when we looked at that, there were more clicks, there was more engagement. It wasn't going to as much spam, right? So they will coach you through what the algorithm is that they see, which is fantastic. We've had a few hiccups with them along the way. However, we are preferring it over MailChimp at the moment. But definitely track your engagement, your unsubscribes, and then how many leads you're getting from that. Okay. Megan has a spreadsheet where she tracks all of her leads and all of that stuff for me. And then I just go in and verify who and what it is. Okay. Any questions before I move on from marketing? Is anyone doing anything else? Let me ask this. Like, if you think terms of marketing and how you could collect leads outside of a newsletter, social media, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, if we think marketing, is anyone doing anything else that would be a lead generating opportunity in the marketing realm? I just want to make sure I haven't missed anything. Rich, can you think of anything?
Not that I'm hearing anything different outside of these platforms.
I mean, you could look, and I almost put this on here, but if you think like smart plans,
Yeah.
some, like your 36 touch or 72 touch, like some of that could be considered marketing. I almost though,
I guess
it would add it to database.
like print
You
marketing.
could
If
do
you're
print
doing
marketing.
mailers, that may be something for marketing, like
Yeah.
circle prospecting or farming on that side.
And I think it just depends on how you want to look at this on your goals. And I didn't have enough time to add, was thinking about that last night, but I'm like, I don't have enough time to add all this in here. For me, I would love to see in our business, I would love to see all of that go under database of like how many just listeds, how many just solds, right? Because that's kind of living in the database realm. However, it is marketing, so you could plop it over on the marketing side too,
Mhm.
either way. But yeah,
I think the biggest issue I see is when someone looks at this, they try to do all 5 things right away.
Yep.
And they can't even gain
Start.
traction in any of them.
Mhm. And that's where I would say, like, if you're not doing any of it, like I said, if you're not doing any, don't make your goal 500, right? Make your goal 5. But if you're looking at this and you're like, we're not doing any of this at a high level, then great. What can you do at a high level? Is it Google or is it Facebook? Maybe it's none of this and it's a newsletter. Right? So be realistic. You're not going to do all of these.
I had a aha whenever you were talking about sending the newsletter
Consistently.
the same time, same day.
Mhm.
So like Katya has newsletter clients and I think she has 9 or 10 now. And she struggles with getting like intakes from the agents in time, and it'll be more like, hey, I need your intake by the 5th of each month, and they're all submitting it on the 5th. Or they miss the 5th. So I don't know if it's like something we can build out where, you know, these 2 agents are hey, you're the 1st of every month. I'm gonna have it out by noon, so make sure you have your intake to me by the 1st.
Yeah.
Cause they fill out an intake
Otherwise,
every
you're
month.
chasing people.
Yeah, yeah, cause then the 5th comes, she's doing them all in 24 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason Megan and I meet about it every single Friday morning is because I know that if she waits until the week before the newsletters due, it's gonna be thrown together. It's not gonna be very intentional. I'm gonna have to make a million changes. She's gonna have to make a million changes. And it's like every week, if we're just taking a section of it and chunking it down and comparing it to how it performed in the past. Cause like we have an entire spreadsheet for this where it's like, she's tracking every single time the newsletter goes out. She's dumping the data in the spreadsheet, which is then telling us, are we growing? Are we not growing? So we can't track something if we're not measuring it. And like Rachel said, if we're not doing half of these, just pick one that you're gonna do really well. And don't, like, especially the newsletter, don't think you're gonna have massive results within in the next 90 days. Like I said, it is a slow burn. You have to train people, you have to figure out, you have to change it up. So at 90 days, don't just say this isn't working. It doesn't matter if it's working or not, do it every single month and make changes until it starts working. But you're never going to know it's working if you're not tracking the metrics from your results.
And we have about 10 minutes left.
Okay. So vendor program, if you don't have a vendor program, okay, that's totally fine. But if you look at this, who are the vendors you work with? The way we kind of did this last time to break it down was I said, if we have, think of leads, right? We have A buyers, B buyers, C buyers, A buyers, B sellers, C sellers. For me, the A vendors were our top dollar. B's were middle dollar contributors and C were lower dollar contributors. So this could have been like title, roof, lender. I know that they're all gonna write me some pretty big checks for events and all the things. This may be like my repair guy. Well, septic dude. You can make your list, you know your people. But if I'm looking at this, I'm saying, hey, I'm throwing an event. We have a budget of $3,000. Can each of you give me 1,000? Right? Hey, we still have a gap in our event. I'm needing $250. So I would say 250. Actually, I would do like 250 to 750 on these. All of these people in our buckets of A's they're gonna give us $1,000 and up. And the C's may be like, there are giveaways, right? If I think about like Scott Berry and I think about some of those people, they're giving me about $50 to $75 at a time. C vendors could also be people who donate things. So Bonbon's Candy Shop. We know she's a small business. She can't sponsor things for us, but she can donate a candy basket for us. And that could be the giveaway at the event. So easiest thing, if you're not doing it, just know who your vendors are. So that if you do need something and you want to start a vendor program, you have somewhere to start. Okay, so list them out.
What we found is the market centers start having those conversations now in Q4 because they're budgeting for what the next year is going to be. So if you could put on the radar, hey, we would love for you to help participate in X, Y, and Z, they can go ahead and start planning that out versus a lot of times they're getting hit up throughout the year. So we've still even found even our vendors now will still add additional things throughout the year, but it's been great to start at the very beginning. So we already have all of that money coming in.
By December of last year, Megan had over $10,000 accounted for 2024. So we have not paid a dime at an event. Her bonuses come out of that, like, it's cost us $0. And we still have money left.
Mhm.
And so that will be, we'll figure out what we do. That maybe go to a team retreat, that may go like Silver Dollar City team trip, like whatever, we'll take that and use it, but just if you're not doing it at that level, just start here. Just start by identifying. And then if you're like, hey, I want to know more about a vendor program, how are you guys doing it? Then send me an email and I'm happy to share you a playbook. Financials, anyone in here in charge of the financials of the team, expenses, book, P&L, right? Okay. So I made this pretty simple because a lot of times this is the last thing agents let go of. So if you looked at clearly the market center, your metrics are gonna be a little bit different. But every single month, are you looking at, 2024, what did we close in volume, GCI expenses, where did we end in expenses? What was our profit percentage? Our business changed drastically when we stopped having an ego and looking at number of homes sold and we started looking at the profit. That's where most people get hung up is they're like, I closed 500 units, been there for years, done that. Now we're like, great, we're closing all these and we're not making any money. So if we want to live our best life, we actually want to be here. When we first started tracking our profit percentage, it was under 20%. And when Jen was really intentional and we looked at it every single month and we compared it with expenses, it grew to 40. So our goal was just to grow it to 30. That year we grew it to 40. So we surpassed our profit goal by 10%.
How do you calculate profit percentage? Because we're just doing like dollar amount profit per month and then quarterly.
So if you looked at your total number of, if you look at your net income and then you have your expenses over there and you know what that looks like, help me walk me through
So
this.
you'll take your net
I don't have
income
mine.
and if you divide it by what the actual income you brought in, what is that percentage that was profit?
Oh.
So like your total income, your net income.
Yeah, so you'll get a percentage out of that. So if I know that I made a net income of $5,000 this month, but my gross income I brought in was $20,000, and I'll take 5 divided by 20,000, and then
okay.
you'll get your percentage of that.
Oh. Start with, just look at your numbers monthly. So even if you don't have any of these goals, maybe your goal is just that you look at your numbers monthly. Okay.
Give a plug, come see me if you need help with those equations.
Then this one I just kind of threw in here. Clearly there's not a metric or measurable in terms of dollar amounts. But save yourself a lot of time as you start to grow. If you're a level 1 through 4 team and you don't have an ops playbook, manual, training system, I promise you're going to want one, because if you grow beyond a level 4 and you're onboarding people and you have none of this, you're going to recreate it every single time. So I broke it down. If you think like the MREO bootcamp, we could send out that agenda or the table of contents on what all's in there. And you could turn every single one of those into, here's my goal. I'm going to work on these top 5. Then I'm going to move to listings. Then I'm going to move to contracts. Then I'm going to move to budget and P&L. But like start building your ops playbook. Megan had this as a goal one year, but hers was really training videos. And we knocked it down into months. So she was going to, record this process and then we were going to add it. And then our checklist now has Google Drive links to every single task so that if Megan were to fall off the face of the earth tomorrow, I could click on the link and figure out how to do what she's doing.
An example of that would be just like the vendor program. What kind of playbook could you create that you have $10,000 at the end of the year? So then going into next year, you already have that vendor money completed.
So
Like
you have
what's
an
your-
events playbook, right? And so in that playbook, it would be, here's our budget. Here's all of the places we shopped at. Here's how much it cost, blah, 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 blah. Here's when I called them, who I called. Here's the contact. It's all laid out, everything you did. We set the table up here. They carved pumpkins here. They picked up a pie here. Da, 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 da. So like when we ordered pies, I just went back into where I keep all that information and was like, here, Madison, here's the email from last year. Order the 200 pies or 150 pies. This is what it looks like. It makes your job so much easier. Then you're not searching. This is the most basic GPS form that I threw in here. Download the one thing one, whatever. I'm sure you can find a prettier one. But if you look at this, you're going to have a team GPS, I hope. So if you did business planning, you're going to have a team GPS. If you don't have a team GPS, start there. Have one for your team. Have one that Pauline and Abby are sharing, right? But if I look at our organization, we have so many people doing so many things that yes, I can oversee our GPS, but I have my own GPS. And on my GPS, it's broken out by people, process, and profit, the 3 Ps. Because I know if I'm focused on people, process, and profit, everyone else is doing what they need to do, but I can stay on track. So the whole point of this is to take everything in operations that you can quantify or measure and turn it into something that keeps you on track. Okay, so what's the goal? What are your 3 priorities? Oh, wrong computer. And then break down your strategies. And then if you get stuck and you're going through that and you have questions, come talk to me. I would love to help you create your GPS. It's one of my favorite things to do. Last but not least is the growth plan. Clearly February is family reunion. Generally in August, you have mega camp, so those would go on there. But when I look at this, it doesn't have to just be professional. Put personal things on here. What books are you reading? What classes are you going to? What are you listening to? Are you eating? Maybe your goal is to eat healthy. Maybe it's to run like the year that me, Jen, and Shanna were running 1,000,000 miles. Like that was every single month because that was growth for me, right? So figure out your growth plan, keep it handy. That way you don't lose track of what you're doing, then you can schedule everything in advance. And share your growth plan with your rainmaker. They need to know what's important for you on how you're growing. I had an like personal aha yesterday. I have been so overwhelmed with everything going on in general right now that every day I've been like coming in like, ugh, here we go again, right? Whatever, and got 1,000,000 things to do. And even though I've taken career visioning, I can't even tell you how many times at this point, I'm like, I'm gonna go down, I'm gonna be supportive. I'm just gonna listen and be a body. I had over a page of notes because it was foundational things and it got my mind moving and I got excited again. And so I realized, like for me, growth to me often is I'm growing educationally. I get really excited about that kind of stuff. And I hadn't been giving myself what I needed. I had been training and coaching and teaching everyone else, but I had actually put nothing else into me. So that was like yesterday, my aha was like, oh, I loved this. I need to go to more of these. Guess who hasn't pulled up their growth plan since like March? This person. So think about those things. Any questions? I know that's like a ton of information.
On the last page, are you just doing personal?
Professional too.
Personal and professional. I do have a digital version of this that if anyone wants it, I'm happy to share it with you guys. If you'll email me, I will send you whatever. Today is my coaching day though, so if you needed, like, don't expect to get it today, it'll probably be tomorrow. But yeah, generally on here, the one that I have is color coded so that I can see the difference in my personal and my professional. And don't overdo it. So just because there are 4 blanks, doesn't mean you have to have 4 things in there. Keep it really realistic. That was probably one of the biggest things that I learned after I became a coach, because they did growth plans with us, is like the more you have on here, the more overwhelming it is and the more likely you're not going to do it. So generally, like professionally, I'll only have a couple things in each month. And then personally, I'll have a couple of things. And it could be like spend 1 weekend with my family, right? 1 weekend trip with no work. That could be a personal growth plan goal for you. Or game night or coffee with, like mine at the first of the year, which I stopped doing, was on my growth plan was I wanted to have a coffee date with Rachel and Shanna once a month. It lasted for maybe 2 times. Because then I stopped looking at it.
It was a great 2 times.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go around the room. I'd love to hear like, what's the one thing on your list that you're gonna take away and look into? Doesn't have to be everything, but like, what's the one thing that stuck out with you?
Refining the database.
Okay. The goal, if Trey's goal is 50, Trey needs 500 mets in this database.
We're gonna try a vendor program for the first time, and so
Cool,
I love that.
that's exciting.
So I've already picked your brain once, I'm sure I will be more.
Well, and Megan's a huge resource on that too, so if you're like, Megan, I wanna go to coffee, she can go to coffee, I'll pay for it.
Which Megan is it?
Hike, or well, Wilson now. It's Maegen. HUYCK. KW@gmail.com. And she's on vacation, so she will not respond until later next week. What other
I like how
takeaways?
you start asking for reviews from day one, not just at the end when it's all done, and then you follow up throughout.
My goal is to always get the review when they're happy, which is generally before they go through inspections. Like when Charlie, we've changed how we handle our files, but Charlie would do listings from start to close. And so for Charlie, she would always start asking for reviews when they were happy with their photos, when they hit the market and they loved their listing. Because on listings, especially, the longer it goes, the more unhappy they get, especially in this kind of market when their days on market are higher. So that was why we started implementing that. Ask while they're happy. What about you two? Anything you didn't know that now you know?
Well, we're lucky enough to be elbow to elbow with you every day, so. Yeah, no, I think back to the reviews thing, like asking them for those reviews at those high points was something that it seems so basic thinking about it, but that has been huge, and not just asking it in the closing part of it, is getting it before, when the listing's live, when the property's under contract, whatever that is.
And usually what I'll do, and you guys aren't on the calendar yet, but they will be, is like we have our team advance next week. And so before that or right after that, I will grab these two and we'll go back through their motivational interview. Or we'll do a motivational interview and then we'll start talking about these things so that they also have their own GPS moving into the new year. Any other ahas, takeaways, implementing? Abby, what about you?
Other things on here. The one I circled the most is if you're not reaching your goals, where's the gap? So I'm building out our 2025 business planning stuff in the next week, like to go over with her in December. So I think that's kind of be central to that.
Most rainmakers are dreamers. They're very optimistic. They're very excited. And where it helps for us to pull them back to earth is say, okay, if you close 50 and next year you want to close 100, if our goal was 50 and now you want to close 100, but we only closed 40. Either tell me how we're going to get there because we're going to hire all these people, or B, what's our plan to actually get there, or is that a realistic goal? Like maybe 100 is a stretch goal, but the real goal is 60. So I think just being realistic with, that is always my biggest struggle with Dan, is Dan still lives in like, we're gonna close 500 units, we're gonna close 500 units. I'm like, right, but we have half the people now, and none of us actually wanna close 500 units. So let's talk about 300.
Awesome.
Thank you guys.
Monica.
Thank you.
Let you walk out of this. So that I don't crash your system. Did I touch something other than the board?